Saturday didn't begin as the nicest day on record. There were whispers of a washout, but the day improved, and it was fantastic to spend an hour of it in the company of Brian Kerr in a tent at Electric Picnic. An hour with Brian Kerr is nowhere near enough time, of course, but over the course of it, he brilliantly brought the podcast tent on an amazing journey. His Drimnagh childhood, his father, Frankie Kerr, his memories of figures like Liam Toohey, stories of coaching and managing from his boyhood club, St Patrick's, to the glory days of Ireland's youth sides. Brian Kerr is passionate about much more than football, though. He's someone with a strong social conscience, someone who is always happy to speak his mind and to do it honestly. Our conversation touched on things like the 2017 visit of children from a football academy in Gaza to Dublin, for example. And I think he's someone who views football and sport more broadly as a force for good within communities and within society. As a broadcaster, he is a voice immediately recognisable, isn't he? And a voice without equal. I love hearing Brian commentate on matches or on off the ball. And as Mary Hannigan noted in the Irish Times, some commentators are informative, some are entertaining. You rarely get it all in one package. For me, the defining thing about Brian is not only his love of the game of football, but all around it and the players. And in this chat, there's a moment where I mention some of the famous young players who came through Kerr's youth teams in the 1990s. You know, he makes this great observation about Damien Duff that even your granny, who knows nothing about football and had never watched a match, would see the talent in Duffer. But for all the famous names I rattled off, Kerr responds by naming others. You know, people who may not have necessarily made a living in the top flight of football, but they were all there and they were all important to him, and they still are. And I know from chatting to footballers that Kerr's continued friendship and interest in their lives means a lot to people and says a lot about him. Brian speaks about the days of jumpers for goalposts in his youth, you know, kickabouts in Crumlin and Drimnagh. But last week witnessed such incredible success for domestic teams. I mean, what Shamrock Rovers and Shelbourne did last week was extraordinary and reminds us how far things have come. This chat brings us from Drimnagh to Libya. It's an amazing journey. You know, we hear about the sheep that stood in between Dave Henderson and Eddie Gormley as St Pat's tried to train. We meet Aslan and other musical memories too. There's a lot of chat about music at the festival, and I left all that in because it's nice to know, I suppose, these things about people that might be less familiar to us. Thanks to Naoise Nunn and everyone at Mindfield for booking this in. A little bit of bad language in it, but not too much. It feels right before this discussion to acknowledge the passing of Ollie Horgan, another great football man, whose death was rightly acknowledged by the president, Michael D. Higgins. He is someone who will always be remembered at Galway United, but particularly at Finn Harps, and he was just 57 years of age. Such people are the backbone of the beautiful game. Enjoy this discussion from Electric Picnic. You're all welcome along to this event with Brian Kerr in conversation. On the way here, I bumped into a brilliant band called Fizzy Orange, but I bumped into them and they were telling me that last year they went to see CMAT, and they said there was a guy in front of them wearing a suit jacket, and they said, "That looks like Brian Kerr." Another member of the band said, "That is Brian Kerr." And he turned around and said, "Why don't you fucking tell everybody?" So if you go and see a cool band, Brian's probably there.
That's a rumour. No truth in that. I had no suit on me. You might have the same jacket and stuff for clothes. But anyway, yeah, I went to see them last night. He recommended them to me, so I had them on the list, and I found my way in to the darkness over there where there's a lot of good stuff going on. And yeah, they're very good. But I think they're on the trailer park just right now. So you make your mind up. You can go if you like. Savour this, Sodge. No, not that good. Not that good.
They're on like 42 times over the weekend. You get a chance to see them.
Fizzy Orange.
Fizzy Orange. A century ago this year in Castle Island, County Kerry, a sports writer without precedent or equal was born. His name was Con Houlihan. And about Brian Kerr, Con Houlihan said that he led St Patrick's Athletic to 2 championships. If he stayed on and led them to a third, he would have qualified for canonisation. There were the glory days as well with Ireland's youth squads in the 1990s. Names like Damien Duff, Richard Dunn, Robbie Keane, John O'Shea all came to the fore, and we dared to dream. And today we're going to be talking about Belfast, Drimnagh, Colonel Gaddafi's Libya, and the beautiful game, music, politics, fizzy orange, and everything else. Brian, to start, I think one of the best pieces of sports writing I've ever read. Dion Fanning wrote a lovely article about your dad, Frankie. In it, Ulick O'Connor said about your dad that if he turned professional as a boxer, he would have won a world championship. Your dad is a revered figure in the world of boxing.
You've done a bit of homework, I have to say, Donald. Yeah, my dad was. I was brought up in the family that we were very aware of my dad's history as a boxer. I never saw him. He was dead long. He was dead. I was only a kid when he died, but he had retired, a long time. He retired. He was only 20. He was only 23 when he retired, and he had won 6 Irish titles at that stage. He was the youngest person ever to win an Irish boxing title. It's nice to be able to boast that about your dad. They changed the rules. He was 16, and they changed the rules that you had to be 17 to go senior. So, but he never talked about his career at all. I would have struggled to know that he was so good. Only my brothers told me, and when I'd be out and about as a kid, people used to say, "Your dad, Frankie Kerr," and it was a bit of a shock. But yeah, he actually the National Boxing Stadium. A lot of you might have been at the odd gig in the stadium. Maybe the boxing stadium and the gigs are coming back there. That was opened in 1939, and my eldest brother told me that my dad was offered £1,000 to go back boxing, to box on the bill. Now, he was an amateur. At that time, if you did anything well, you might get an Eason's voucher for a half a crown or a guinea. A guinea was often, he used to get prizes of a guinea, he told me. But he was offered £1,000 to go back and box on the opening night of the stadium. And he didn't do it. He obviously a bit of stubbornness in him. I don't know where I got it from, but there was a bit of stubbornness in it. So he didn't. But he coached a lot, and he coached in various clubs, a very diverse group of clubs. He coached the Jewish Boxing Club in Dublin, Maccabi, and he coached Trinity College at the same time, and the club in Drimnagh, St John Bosco, which became Drimnagh Boxing Club. And he used to get paid for doing the Jewish one. And my eldest brother told me he used to get paid. My brother used to get sent to a chemist in Terranure to collect the money. So there must have been a bit of an enclave around that way at the time. But yeah, so he had a very, very good career, really tight into Trinity. Katrina O'Sullivan she might be still on over there for Trinity, close ties with Trinity, but he coached at Trinity for 25 years as a boxing coach.
You mentioned the National Stadium. It's a glorious kip, and when Leonard Cohen played it in 1988 during Dublin's so-called millennium, Leonard said, "Dublin, I hear you're 1,000 years old. This must be one of the first buildings."
Well, the thing about I went there with my father when I was 8 and 9 on regular on a Friday night to be boxing, and he'd bring me, and it was really interesting because the place used to be full. There was lots of gigs, lots of boxing big bills and boxing clubs and tournaments, and he'd have always some boxers boxing, 2 or 3 fellas from Trinity or from Drimnagh, and he'd leave me out. He'd get someone to look after me. But before it all got going, he used to bring me to the dressing room. And I know I talked about this before. The dressing room before boxing is kind of an amazing place. There's a ritual and quietness. I think nowadays you see the professional stuff and they tell you there's noise and mad music and rappers and all that. But this wasn't, my dad wasn't having that. My dad didn't even like Muhammad Ali. He thought he was too flash, right? By far. But there was the ritual of the bandaging up and the quietness and the gloves being applied and quiet instructions, and it was a fabulous experience for a young kid to learn about sport and learn about preparation and concentration. and not been about madness, which I see in dressing rooms. Well, I have seen in soccer over the years. I've tried to turn back the clock to the old ways: be quiet, shut up, concentrate, get your head together. But anyway, that's what I was brought up on. So it was interesting. Experience, and maybe it helped me for later on in coaching. I don't know. I don't know where it came from. I don't know where my interest in that side of it came.
So a youth in Drimnagh, the beautiful game had a strong pull in Drimnagh, as it did in all working class suburbs. And Drimnagh, for anyone who doesn't know it, it's nestled between Inchicore and Crumlin, so it's kind of perfectly positioned for a young lad who loves football. Crumlin United, you're not only playing with them, you're managing teams at Crumlin from the bizarre age of, is it 13 years of age when you first manage a football team?
Well, there's a feel, people here probably might know Crumlin Hospital, because you had to visit a kid, unfortunately, in Crumlin Hospital over there. There's a field at the back of it. We used to say it was beside the nurses' place, right? There was a building that the nurses lived in, accommodation. And there's a field beside it. It's actually on a road called Drimnagh Road. And the Olympics used to go on there every day. Now, there was no gold, silver or bronze given out, and there was no sign of Pa Hickey anywhere. But there was lots going on every day in that field. There was running, there was card playing, there was mowel. There was a game called the mowel where you used to throw money in the shore. But there was really intensive sport. To be a bit of gad, be hurling, be a bit of cricket in the summer, try and play cricket, be tennis when Wimbledon beyond. And in the running, like, you had to be good to survive in the running, because Eamon Coughlin was my mate, and it just turned out like he became world champion in 1983, 5,000 metres. The Wanaka Mile in America, he won, I think, nine chairman of the boards. But he was young, as a young fella running around Drimnagh, he was like that. But it was really competitive. Tony Ward would have been there, Kevin Morden, Jerry Ryan played for Ireland after, played for Brighton, Bowes before Brighton, Pat Bourne, who had a great career soccer player. And every day was so intensive. To get a match, to get a game in the best match, you had to be good. Yeah. So I survived in that environment, but it was a great environment for a kid. It was a lot of, you had to learn about respect and playing against bigger fellas and older fellas, and learn about technique. And, the goals weren't always perfect. There might be big coats or small coats, or your jacket or whatever was thrown down. But the rows over the goals didn't last any significant time. Whether it went in, how do you judge whether it went over the coat or not? But
no VAR in the working class.
There was no VAR, and it might be 10 half time, 20 the winner. And it's at 19 all, some of these matches. And the ball goes over the coat. And now there's a row about whether it went over the coat or went inside. It went inside the coat. It was definitely a goal. That could go on, Owen. But it was an environment of kind of competition, learning, respect. And, it was a great area. I still go down to past the hospital on my way down to Inchicore on a regular trip down Cooley Road, where we lived on Cooley Road. And Eamon lived just opposite me in 110. We were in 93. And still a good mate of mine. And, there was lots of fellas did well out of that. Tony Ward knocking about, playing a bit of soccer, not throwing. Wasn't much rugby in the field now. It wasn't a stronghold of rugby. It was maybe a stronghold of boxing and football and a bit of and a bit of hurling, whatever you have in yourself.
At the time that you're growing up and developing this great graph for the beautiful game, the great event of football in these islands happens, which is the World Cup final next door. And you're there in 66, which is just amazing. You see that game yourself.
So 1966, you can't believe I was alive in 1966. You young people here. I was around. Now, I was in a pram at the time, but my dad, I had a brother working in England, managing a pub called the Gunnersbury Arms in kind of near, it was actually in Acton, near Acton Tube Station. But he rang my dad and said, I think he must have rang me down work. We hadn't got a phone at home. He rang my dad at work and said, will you let the young fella come over? I'll get tickets for the matches. So England have played the first match at Uruguay is 0-0. And I think a day or two after, I'm not on the boat, I'm on the plane to London to go to watch matches of the World Cup. And so I was staying with, my brother lived with 3 girls, as you do, in a flat, an apartment over the shops on just beside Acton Tube Station, which is still there. So is the apartment. I'll tell you that story if we get time. But I stayed there, and my brother pulled out tickets. Wasn't into football. Was into boxing a bit. Used to get tickets behind the bar, the pub, which he managed. Somehow or other, the tickets are rolling. I'm getting sent with various blokes from the pub to see England playing, and England playing Mexico, England playing France. I'm at France and Mexico in White City Dog Track. Can you believe that? There was match played in White City Dog Track at the World Cup. Like, not Arsenal's ground or Spurs ground or Brentford's ground or West Ham. The fucking Dog Track I don't know where it was. White City Dog. Anyway, so I was at that, and then I'm at the quarterfinal. Argentina, Ratton. I have a good story on that. So it was a warm, hot Saturday, and the match itself wasn't brilliant. But there's another match going on at the same time. North Korea and Portugal, who are top team. Eusebio, Coluna, Torres, big tall centre forward, great team. Same kind of players that played against Manchester United in 1968 Cup final. Anyway, so match isn't great. There's a row going on. Ratton is getting put off, the captain of Argentina. Not too happy about it. Doesn't want to leave the field. There's a lot of pushing and shoving and meanwhile, there's a goal scored. So in those days, pre-electronic scoreboards, blokes have to go up and put the score up, right? So the other night, I'm at one end of the stage, I'm looking at the far end, and there's two blokes in white coats walking along what appears to be about a 6-inch wide kind of a platform to get to this thing. And I'm looking going, Jesus, that looks a bit dodgy, but good luck with that. But they go to Portugal and pass by Portugal and turn over the number. It goes 1-0 North Korea, which was sensational at the time. And then a few minutes later, they're on the move again and they skip Portugal. I'm going, it'll be 1-1. No, they go over and he turns her over and it goes 3. So North Korea are now 3 up against Portugal, right? Anyway, you know the end of the story. Portugal come back and win 5-3. Eusebio gets 4 goals. Our match, meanwhile, is shite. And England win 1-0. Now, I don't realise, I'm happy out England win. I've no problems with that at all. But I told that story on the radio one day, and somebody rang in and said one of the two blokes in the white coats was their dad from Waterford. And the two lads had gone to London. They were in college and they went to London looking for work for the summer. So they went to the Dole office or wherever you went at that time. I don't know. It wasn't probably employment exchanges at that time or fancy places you put in your CV. But anyway, they went in and the bloke offered them the option of a bit of work in Hyde Park, cutting the grass in Hyde Park, or the job at Wembley Stadium doing the scoreboard at the World Cup. So surprisingly, the two lads went for the World Cup job, and so the girl ran in. So that was so. It was. I kind of wondered, did I make that story up? I'm not making up the end of it, but I thought I made up the start of it until she rang in and confirmed that it was true. So I was at every match. I was at the final, the 4-2, and the famous line, "They think it's all over." Did you know where that came from? They think it's all over. The program. It is now. I think it was Kenneth Wolstenholme was the commentator, and England were winning 3-2, and I think the ref blew the whistle for a throw-in, and people started running on the pitch, and he said they think it's all over, and then he hesitated just at that time. Jeff Hurst is running through, and he smashes the ball. It hits the underside of the bar and goes down into the net. And he said, and it is now. And that's where it came from. So I was there. I wasn't dealing with it. I was too busy waving to the Queen. I was up near the royal box. How does your brother pull out? On the morning of the match, he says to me, bad news for you. He was a lovely fella, my brother Frankie. Not a bit like me at all. He was a quiet lad and lovely manner about him. Anyway, he said on the morning, he said, look, I have a bit of bad news. I had to give your ticket away. And I'm already in tears. He said, there was another boy needed that ticket very badly, he said, but hold on. He said, I think I've got a better one for you. And somehow or other, he pulled out a ticket, £3.10 for the World Cup final, not far from the Royal Box. I kid you not. How lucky he got a ticket. I mean, there was no can you imagine the World Cup final in England, sometime in the future, and tickets to the World Cup final, and the bloke that works in the bar in the Gunnersbury Arms pulls one out, and he can pull out two, and he's not even into football. So I was eternally grateful. So I wrote a piece. I was doing pieces for the Times on the World Cup in South Africa, 2010. They asked me to do a bit for the final, and I said, "Can I do a bit on the 1966 final?" And they said, "Yeah, batter away." The sports editor was really good guy. So I battered away and did a piece about being at that and Bobby Charlton's goals in the semi-final against Portugal. He got 2 great goals. And in fairness to them, they reproduced the picture. I tried to describe the goal, and Bobby Charlton's... I'm allowed to stand up?
Yeah.
No. So Bobby Charlton... I'm not Bobby Charlton. I just have the hairdo. But Bobby Charlton is striking the ball. And it's like that, it's the perfect technique, right? But Bobby Charlton, it was a bit of a comb over job on getting there, right? And so that's flying, his hair is flying, the ball is flying, but I was in line with it at the edge of the box, right? So I've tried to describe this in the Times piece. They reproduced a picture from 1966, black and white, beautiful picture of Bobby Charlton scoring that goal. And so that, but anyway, at the time, my brother was back from England. For years, I'd been trying to get him to come home. He'd no one in England. His wife had died. He'd no family. I was trying to get him to come back. He'd left at 15. And I'd come back regularly. It was always excitement when I was a kid when my brother came back. But he came back 2010. And he wasn't great. He wasn't well. And he died. And but he was in the hospital on the morning. Sorry, in the morning I went up to the hospital on the Saturday. And I said, I did a piece in the paper about the World Cup in 1966. And I mentioned, I don't know how you got the ticket. And you never told me. And he said, yeah, I saw the article. There's a bit of exaggeration in it. I said, that's poetic license. I said, you're allowed to exaggerate a little bit. I said, you still never told me. He said, I'll tell you again sometime. And he smiled, and I was so happy. He looked, But anyway, he only got another couple of weeks. But so that was the World Cup, 1966. It was a great occasion to be there. And every time I tell someone, they said, what? At the World Cup final, because there was a bloke around there where he was at the European Cup final with the 7-3 match with Real Madrid and Eintracht Frankfurt in Hampden Park. There was allegedly 120,000 people at least. But there was a bloke from Drimnagh down, he lived in Palmer, his name is, he boxed in my dad's club, and he was allegedly at it, and that was his claim to fame in Drimnagh. He was living out, he was getting free points in McGregor's pub still on the back of that, the one, the Marble Arch. It used to be the White Horse in my day, in my dad's day.
Anyway. I think that North Korean story from that World Cup is one of the great romantic football tales. And I remember saying to someone, what a tragedy, they were 3-0 up and they threw it away. And my friend said, well, if it's any consolation, they probably won the match in the North Korean press, which is true.
I think one of the scorers was Pak Do-ik. Do you remember him? Pak Do-ik, and Kim's son Jim, I think, was the other fella.
Heroes are plentiful in your story, but one name that I know you revere, Liam Toohey, an icon in Irish football, at Shamrock Rovers especially, someone who had played in that famous game against Yugoslavia when the Catholic Archbishop of Dublin threatened fire and damnation on anyone who went to watch Yugoslavia play. Liam remembered watching the lads in the tunnel. He said, they're all blessing themselves. There were nearly more Catholics on their side than there were on ours. Liam is a giant of the game, and for you, in terms of going into coaching, he was really a great influence.
Yeah, was that 1956, was it? Yeah. That match, yeah. That was a famous match where he threatened to get the match called off, didn't he, the Archbishop of Dublin? They weren't powerful in those days, the Catholic Church at all. We just get the internationals called off because we don't like the name Yugoslavia, or there's a bit of communism in there, whatever it was. But yeah, Liam was, I was lucky enough I knew Liam as the player. As a kid, I used to see him scoring lots of goals. He was very funny one time. He used to like riling up. He was always funny. He liked riling up officials and blazers and people in authority, particularly in football, And one day he said to me, I always a great time for those fellas. And he would use a stronger word than fellas, you know. And he said, "Did you ever notice the balls on their blazers?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "If you look on the blazers, the bigger the bollocks, the bigger the ball, right?" And seemingly, there was a spell in the FAI where they had different. They had an orange ball if you were just an ordinary blazer, but if you were the next stage up, maybe you're on a committee, there was a silver ball, and it was a bit bigger, like it was like a, excuse me, Fred, was getting into a bit of a diddy, right? And then there was another. If you were the president, like it was a real goldy one, and it was. And he said to me, "Jesus, they're all so proud of their balls on the blazers, you know." But he in annoyance one day we were talking about it to him. He said. He was very dry, Liam. He said, "You know, I'm the only fella that scored in 3 internationals in a row. And in their feckin' wisdom, they dropped me for the next match." And I said, "What?" He said, "I scored in 3 internationals in a row for Ireland. And they dropped me for next." So I actually checked her out. And he did. He scored against Scotland. This had been early 60s stuff. Scotland, Iceland and Poland in 3 matches in a row. And they used to have a committee of 5. It was worse than my time. It was a committee of 5 used to pick the team. We called the Big Five, right? And they were all dopes. But they were able to get on the international committee through the clubs, and they could become a selector. And they didn't have to have any qualifications. I mean, it was kind of, ironically, Liam was the first actual manager of Ireland that said, "I'm picking the squad, I'm picking the team, or else I'm not doing it." And then Giles come in after that. But it was an education being with him. I was lucky enough I used to meet him in the boxing stadium as well. He after he managed Ireland, he managed Trinity College, and he did. When he was managing Ireland, you won't believe this. He was the head salesman for Valley Ice Cream in Tipperary, right? And he
Glory of football.
the glory, and he told me he got 500 quid a year before tax for managing the Irish international team. He did all right if you look at his record. But anyway, he was a great mentor for me, and he not in terms of tactical stuff, but just in dealing with players and man management, and being light at times about it. And it was a pleasure to be around him. I always think of him.
For you, everyone's boyhood dream came true for you, which was you got to manage your own boyhood football team, the team you followed. You were there from 1986 at St. Pat's. Really curious time for the club. I mean, they're doing a stint in a Greyhound Stadium in Harold's Cross. It was a strange time to be managing St. Pat's, but to be there, I mean, the teams that you were managing at Pat's, you had fellas unavailable because they're working shifts as firemen or policemen. The financial uncertainties of it all, it was a different League of Ireland from what we have now.
Yeah, but I was part of that. Like, I was working in UCD. I was allegedly working in science in UCD. I was a lab technician in ag chemistry. Maybe people in the room that know someone who've done ag science. I was a technician in ag science in chemistry, and soil science was my specialty. Fucking hell. Just as well they weren't depending on me for the future of Irish agriculture. But anyway, a lot of time on the phone on a daily basis trying to get players and so on. But yeah, the players were part-time. We moved to, I had a lot of cover in the department. Some great people covered for me. But with St. Pat's, I got the job. I was lucky I hadn't played at a good level, but I'd done a few coaching courses and managed a few lower level teams. I managed Shelbourne's B team. We did all right, and eventually I was offered the Pat's job, and I turned it down first time because I was working in the home farm. It was mentioned Jerry Farley over there mentioned it about his dad on home farm this morning. I remember his dad, Eamon Farley. But I was there for a couple of years, and then Pat's offered to me again. I was afraid I might never get it. And it was my boyhood club going to watch Pat's. And suddenly you end up with the manager and you're told there's nothing, there's no money, there's a heap of bills that high and so forth and so on. But I scrapped a few teams together. Most of the players that were there left when I got the job because they didn't know who I was or was there any use or not. And they got out as quick as they could, but it allowed me to get in good young players I knew. And we started to do quite well. But the pitch had a 6'3" drop on it. From the top left-hand corner. Is that the rain? Glad we're in here. Jeez, this should keep a crowd. I was worried you're all going to leave like the other few. Anyway, there was 6'3" drop from there that corner down to that corner of the pitch. So, you could play against the wind in the first half, and then the second half you had to face the hill. It was a very unusual pitch. So I used my agricultural knowledge and I decided I would get us to move out for a few months to get the pitch made flat, because we had 5-0 all draws one season at home. Teams used to come and sit and defend. And so Harold's Cross dog track was available. We moved into the middle of the dog track. Part of my training routine on a Monday, Wednesday, clean up the dog shit off the pitch before training. Lovely. Every manager should learn about this on the coaching courses. But, man, and then you could watch the dog racing after. It was great fun. One night I was watching the dog racing, actually. Did you ever see this happen? And the dogs are coming lashing down the back straight, I suppose it's called, and the hare is going just past us where the dressing room is, and the hare fucking slowed down. And the hare slowed down so much that the dogs ran past the hare. And the dogs are looking back at the hare. And the people are screaming, there's money been lost here, right? A lot of money been lost here. And anyway, so I don't know, did the hare run out of steam, or did they not put the money in the meter to keep the hare going? Anyway, back to Harold's Cross on the match. So we did all right there, and we won the league playing there in 89-90. But we needed to get back to Inchicore. There was no money. The pitch was done. It was lovely, and there was sheep on the pitch. Now I'm at home. Sheep on the pitch. I used to work with sheep in the agriculture. So so on training nights, I was quite adept at moving the sheep, until one particular night there's a stubborn sheep, standing in the middle of my training ground in Inchicore, and he won't move. Now, I know he's probably not well or whatever, but I've tried to hoosh him, I've tried to be gentle. Brian said, would you not move over into the pens? I know you're getting slaughtered in the morning, but still, that's no reason not to move. So he just wouldn't move. So we trained on around that sheep. And I can remember Eddie Gormley, who was one of our greats, playing a 1-2 off the sheep, right? And Dave Henderson's the goalkeeper. He's going, hold on, Eddie, wait till I line myself up on the other side of the sheep. So it was kind of crazy, but you had to just run with the flow. It was either that or over in St. Michael's Estate, where there was a glass on the tarmac had them over in the middle of Michael's Estate, which we used on other training nights. But we did get back to Inchicore after the sheep all moved off the pitch and the stand and the dressing room were rebuilt, and we kind of gloriously got back 93. Christmas 93, we got back after receivership, liquidation, a few other things which meant we hadn't got a bin, but we kept going, and then we got back, and under Tim O'Flaherty, a great chairman, we got back, a few fellas I used to be in school with, and it was great. We got back there.
Well, I think about Con Houlihan's line. He said the good people of Inchicore have followed St. Pat's through tin and tinner. There hadn't been much to cheer about for a long time before you came along. In your time as Pat's manager, one of the most curious episodes in the history of Irish football occurred, a visit to Libya. And Johnny McDonnell has said about it, when you're young, you don't realise the political side of it. We were just going to play football. You brought a combined St. Pat's Bows team to play in Colonel Gaddafi's Libya. How did this happen?
As you do. At the time, Libya weren't exactly popular around the world, right? They were probably the Afghanistan of now, maybe Iran, maybe Israel. They were not popular people. They were allegedly supplying arms to the IRA at that time. So what happened was, us been stuck. We were beaten in the cup, the first round of the cup, I named Home Farm, mentioned earlier, in the knocked out in the first round, which meant we were going to have a few weekends with no game. But Bohemians were also knocked out of the cup in the first round. And I didn't bring the team, but I did get the call about the trip. It was Billy Young was the manager. Billy died just a few months ago. Great guy. Managed Bows for years and years. Lovely fella. I was on coaching courses with him, trying to learn a bit about the game. Great man. And so Billy, they were knocked out of the cup, we were knocked out. So I got a call from a fella, I think his name is Peter Doyle, a lad from Bray, didn't know anything about football. And he said, would you be interested in going to Libya for a game against the national team? I said, we might, yeah. It beats playing Lansdowne Rangers in a friendly in the school in St. Michael's in Inchicore. So he said there'll be some money, and I negotiated a vast sum of money. I thought it was something like 10 grand, which meant that we were going, between two clubs, we were going to get 5 grand, which would be enough to pay the wages for a few weeks, which was really important. So off we went to Libya. There was 8 players from each team, I think. And we went to Malta, I remember, and we were told we wouldn't be able to bring any drink in or anything like that, and it was dry country. So we stopped in Malta, and we got onto another plane. And I remember we managed to smuggle some alcohol in the first aid kit, and we thought that would be clever. They're not going to search that. So anyway, we got into Libya. And before long, there was a gang of people arrived at the hotel who were working there. There were some Irish lads and English. And said, we want to come down to our place. We have a bar, right? So they had this compound where the foreign people lived. And they brought us down that night. A few of us went down. I volunteered to go, as you do, being only the assistant manager. And they had, what happened was the little apartment block, and one of the blokes had left. And instead of moving on his apartment, they set up as a bar, and they put in taps and all the paraphernalia of a real Irish bar. And they had just hoosh that they were making themselves. But we were able to restock the bar with the smuggled gear that was in the first aid gear. Anyway. So we enjoyed the night there, and so anyway, we went to play the match. They thought we were Jack Charlton's Ireland. They thought they were expecting Jack Charlton, and they got me, right? Different bloke, different accents, different size altogether. But they were looking for Tony Cascarino and John Aldridge and Ronnie Whelan, and they got Johnny McDonald and Curtis Lemon and Pat Kelch, and not quite the same lads. But anyway, we went into the stadium. So the match was, say, 4 o'clock kickoffs, roasting hot. Dressing room was a kip, little stone dressing room, one shower, one toilet. And we went out to do the warm-up, and there was a parade that started of people who had been injured in the most recent war they'd been involved in. And there was a lot of lads not in great nick at all. There was a lot of wheelchairs and fellas on crutches, and a sad scene. But on the other hand, there was a lot of fellas on horses and camels and very decorative clothing. And at one stage, Joe Walsh or Joe Lawless said, "There's Gaddafi, he's on the second camel." And we had to persuade Joe. You might have said, there was actually it was a programme in league with Gaddafi. Was on a few years ago, and it was quite true. And we had to film of the match and all, because the match was played. See that carpet that you're under your feet there? That's better than what the pitch was in this stadium in Benghazi. I'm not joking you. That the grass on the pitch, it was like, I think it might have been in the Gresham Hotel during the 1916 Rising. It was like that, and it was stitched together every year, and it wasn't like, it was a makey up bit of a carpet, and the ball was but the big thing was the parade went on and on and on, and the match didn't start at 4. The match didn't start at 4:30 or 5, or 5:30. I think it started about 6:30. We'd had to abandon the warm-up into the back out, and away we went, and there was only like about 60,000 at it, Our lads are used to playing League of Ireland. There might be 2,600 Pats and Bows match, not 60,000. We got hostile reception would be mild and how they looked at us. But we got out with a 1-1 draw, and the party that night back at the camp was sensational. And so we're coming back from the party anyways. This Welsh fella was driving a minibus, gang of us madness, singing, and a Land Rover pulled up at the side of your man driving the thing at the traffic lights, asked him for his credentials, which he obviously hadn't got, and there was a bit of abusive language anyway, and basically a man was told to follow the bloke who was obviously a policeman, undercover, whatever. So we went to the prison. It was like something out of the High Chaparral or something. There was a big wooden yoke on the gate that your man had to like lift it up, open, in we go, right? The lads are oblivious to this. They're having a good time. Players are great, all having a laugh. And meanwhile, the fella who's driving, our driver, is led away and put in a cell, right? And we're now, it's 2 or 3 in the morning now, it's not here, and our flight is at 11. And I'm envisaging Irish team lost in Libya, Irish team imprisoned in Libya, Irish government, Department of Foreign Affairs searching for. Anyway, we sat in the bus. I didn't enjoy the rest of the sing-song for a while. I said, we better go in and look for it. I went in, and in my best Libyan, I spoke to the manager of the said jail, explaining to him that we were leaving next day and we could do with getting the driver out. So he didn't, the conversation wasn't great. He wasn't giving me a lot of encouragement, but he went over and there was a bloke lying on the floor outside the cell, and he was Chris Hughton lookalike, right? This lad is lying, having a good sleep. Your man gives him a boot, which meant it was time for him to wake up and open the cell, and he let out our mate who was standing there, very relaxed, smoking, gets out, gets the minibus, and away we went. Back to the hotel. Relief for the assistant manager, not to blame for any said incident. In the morning, the money arrived in a plastic bag. 10 million denarii or something like that, where it was like Monopoly money. It wasn't going to pay the wages. It definitely wasn't going to be much use for the lads to pay for petrol for their cars. And anyway, we the money was exchanged. We went off and got it in dollars from
From St. Pat's, you moved towards headquarters, so to speak. And I love this from the Sindo 1998. The glory that Brian Kerr and Noel O'Reilly have brought to this country has not been achieved by accident. The chances are they will do it again in the future. And what you did in the 90s with that youth team was absolutely extraordinary. And together with Noel, that's something you're very, very proud of.
Yeah, we've actually got a reunion tomorrow of the under-16s. I'm missing the last day here. I stupidly agreed to the date, the 31st, because the international team are coming in, and it means that John O'Shea can be available. So he was part of that team. John O'Shea, Jim Goodwin, Andy Reid did very well. Jim Goodwin is managing Dundee United, and they've got a match, unfortunately, on Sunday. But we've got, 15 of the players. Lee Miller died, sadly, and it's a kind of memorial for Lee Miller. I was scrapping up in the attic a few weeks ago, and I found a signed jersey from the day they won the European Championship 1998. They weren't bad. We only beat Spain, Portugal and Italy in the row to win it, So the opposition weren't bad. It was quite a good team. So we beat Italy 2-1 in the final. But we've got that team together tomorrow after, 20 years, 98, 27 years. So we've had a couple of 1 or 2 reunions were done before, but so we have it was an amazing achievement. I couldn't believe it. We were in Scotland and got a Rolls first match with Scotland 0-0, the home team. Then we beat Denmark. And then the last match of the group was Spain. We beat Spain 2-0. And we got lucky in the draw. We got Finland in the quarter-final. Beat them. And beat Portugal in the semi-final 2-0. And then Italy in the final 2-1. So it was extraordinary. We actually didn't concede a goal until the final. And but they were a great team, great players. I was fortunate to have them, fortunate to be working with brilliant staff, Noel O'Reilly, the physios, Declan Mann, Ken Coffey. I had a lot of good people around me. Pete Mann was the scout. Pete Mann, I'll just tell you this story. A friend of mine, he managed St. Francis. He wasn't a friend of mine before I brought him there. I brought him because he was the best bloke I knew for looking at players. But anyway, he went to the first game. We drew with Scotland. He's at the other game of the group. I got back to the hotel. I said, how'd it go? He said, Spain are very good, but you could beat them, he says. Denmark, you'll be all right. Be able for them. I said, great, lovely. Give us a report. So Pete goes off the room, comes back. So after every match, he has the report. So we get to the final. And I said, it's great now. You'll be able to come to the final. You won't be going to any other match. He said, no, not going to the final. I said, what? Not going to the final. I've not seen you playing so far. Not bringing you any bad luck. I said, you are going to the final. You and me have been around a long time in Irish football. There's never been an Irish team in the final of a European Championship. No, not going. I said, Pete, you're going. That's it. I'm not having it. So anyway, I persuaded him to go. He's in the dressing room, not saying much. Always impeccably dressed, Pete Mann. Had the motor factors in North Sector Road. Great bloke. Managed St. Francis for about 30 years. shirt and tie. He's there. So first half, he's calm enough. He's just behind me on the bench. Second half, we're hanging on a bit, 2-1. Andy Reid's on the far side. The match was in St Johnson's pitch, McDermott Park. I said, will you go over and get a hold of Andy for me and tell him to stop pissing around and let the ball go when he has it? So he walks around the pitch and he's almost getting up the sideline and go bit. And next thing, a big policeman, you can't walk here. So he has to jump over the fence. So Andy is on the ball and he's having a bit of a fiddle with it. And next thing I hear P, Andy, let the fucking go, will you? And Andy nearly dies, because he knows Pete's voice. His dad would have played for Pete, Billy and Victor Reid. He nearly died. So the next ball Andy gets, he's afraid he's going to get it in the ear and the neck from Pete, and it's a simple pass forward to Dave McMahon. And that was how it was. So Pete was a great guy, and he's coming tomorrow as well. But it was.
Well, you're very proud of those young players. I remember seeing you on the pitch with Damien Duff before Pats and Shelburne last year. Like, they went on to do remarkable things, many of those young players.
Yeah, but there was a lot of them had very mediocre careers and did just as well. Some of them are working out. The team that were in Malaysia, for instance, Dave Worrell works in finance. Alan Kirby worked for BDO, and a lot of them have done very well. Colin Hawkins, Diageo, a lot of them have done very well in life, not necessarily in football. A lot of them had steady careers. Most of them end up back in the League of Ireland. The likes of Damien was exceptional, Damien Duff, Robbie Keane, but I had nothing to do with that. They would have been, your grandma would have spotted the talent with them if she never watched football in her life. If she just looked out a window someday, she would have said, who's the blondie fella? Is that the Duff fella? Jesus, he looks like a player. It didn't take me to identify that Damien was something exceptional, or Robbie Keane for that matter, or a lot of the other players, Liam George, Richard Dunn. They were exceptionally talented young players. I was lucky enough to be around at the time and take them and mould them into something. And they talk about DNA of teams, and we did certainly. Noel O'Reilly had an ability to establish a DNA, a way of playing, a way of behaving, a way of taking on the opposition. Was we can do this. I don't care whether it's we actually beat Spain. We didn't, I didn't, nothing to do with it. I just was putting shape on it. But in that period, we beat Spain in 5 different competitions. Underage level, we beat Spain. They used to come, we used to see them in the hotel, the same blokes managing the teams like me and Noel, and we used to see them looking at us going, Jesus, not these again. Because they knew we'd find a way to beat them. And we didn't always be gorgeous, but it was effective. And a lot of the days it might have been a 1-0 without us having a huge amount of the ball. But when we had it, it was nice. And when we won, it was nicer. And very special. And beating Spain I always felt that was the, that was the top. And as it worked out later on, as they dominated at international level.
Walking around the festival, and you can't get away from what's happening in the world that we're living in. Back in 2017, I love those pictures of you on Sandymount Strand with members of a football academy from Gaza. And I often think, what's happened to those young lads that were kicking a ball with you on Sandymount Strand. Emmett Malone said that their club back home is reported to have been bombed twice in the last 5 years. Football can't ignore Palestine, surely. What do you want to see happen from FIFA and UEFA? For one, I think the clubs in the illegal settlements, for example, should be expelled.
Yeah, I just I'm not amazed now anymore at the behaviour about UEFA and FIFA when it comes to doing the right thing. We see what Infantino goes on with Trump and the trophy and licking up to Trump constantly, but not doing the right thing or saying the right thing. I mean, Israel should have been expelled from football ages ago. The club shouldn't be playing in European competitions for sure. UEFA should be doing an awful lot more to help the situation in Palestine. I mean, you see the riches that they lavish on the richest clubs, in already the richest clubs in the world, and they're lavishing more riches on them and FIFA, on that FIFA Club World Cup. It is disgraceful. amount of money they're giving out. Meanwhile, the bombing goes on. And in fairness, last night, looking at the Hosier show and the numbers, I don't know if people saw that in Hosier show, we had numbers for the military spending over the last 10 years, billions and billions and millions. The figures were just astronomical, and it was flicking up on the screen 2018 and 19, and the figures, billions and the numbers of people who've been killed in wars in the world, and the numbers of children who've lost their lives, and the displaced people. It's just scandalous what's going on in the world, and it's scandalous that, in fairness to Irish people and the Irish government to some degree, but it's still wishy-washy what people are doing, what the EU is doing. A friend of mine, Fintan Drury, wrote a book. His book is out recently. It's about the war, about what's going on there. And he predicted months and months ago that the Israelis would starve them. And he predicted it right, So that was the thing with the kids from Gaza. We tried to get the kids in. I'm involved with SARI, which is Sport Against Racism of Ireland. Still chipping away, doing a lot of great educational stuff on the ground. It's quite depressing at the moment in Ireland, some of the stuff that's happening. But we're working on the education side. We used to do a lot of events, and we're doing great work with not a lot of funding. The government is starting to realise that they need us, and they need what Sardi are doing and tell you, because if you don't teach the kids what's correct, it's not going to change from what we're getting at the moment. The Gaza thing was a lovely little event at the time where they brought off over about 20 kids and brought them around Ireland, gave them a few weeks of goodness and welcome. But the most noticeable thing about those kids at that time, they were playing 12 and 14. They were like kids of about 7 in Ireland. Physically, they were already starved. The natural development that you should have had through proper nutrition as kids was being denied them. And that's, what year was that?
2017.
2017, 8 years ago. So imagine what any kids that survived this war are going to be like in the future. It's just scandalous.
So, Brian, just before we conclude, we're at a music festival. We opened by talking about Fizzy Orange, recognising you in the crowd at CMAT. I was going through the bill, and one of the names that leapt out at me, Aslan on the Salty Dog stage. I love the story of you bringing Aslan to perform for the national team. Some of whom didn't know who they are. Christy Dignam said, this is like playing in your granny's front room when he walked out to see a group of players who weren't entirely sure who he was. I think that's a nice note on which to end this. I love that story.
Yeah, well, look, my PA at the time had that musical background, or worked as an agent. And I said, look, any chance of getting Aslan out to the hotel to gig? So I thought they'd come out and play an acoustic set, but they come out with the truck, with the gear, right? To play in the restaurant at the Port Marnock Hotel, right? And I went in during the day, and the lads are setting up all the gear, massive banks. Oh, the fuck me. Is it Led Zeppelin coming tonight, or who's coming? Anyway, so that's it. He came out, and he said, Christy said, yeah, it's like playing your granny's front parlour, he said, right? So it's, the 24 players sitting there with their arms folded in their Irish tracksuit staff. So entertain us. Here we use, it's a bit like that. But they give it full whack, and they were brilliant. And the players ended up, of course, being fans after. A lot of the Englishy, as I used to call them, the Englishy Irishy fellas, the English-born players, like, they batter me for that. No, I love them. But, say Kevin, and it was a great friend of mine, Gary Breen, and, they wouldn't have known them that well, but did a great show, and they became fans after. It was brilliant. So they're on somewhere
they're
in
on
here.
The Salty Dog.
They're on my list. I have them on my list. They're one of the about 40 on my list to try and see over the rest of the day. Most of it's in there, not so much of it out there. The big ones are not. Big ones.
You were one of the 127 people at Self-Esteem last night when Chapel Roan was on the main stage.
Yeah, well, I did a bit of Chapel Roan, and then I did Self-Esteem, and then I did John Spillane, and then I did, Callum Agnew. That was a bit earlier. What was the other one? Oh, yeah, Fizzy Orange. Callum Agnew was brilliant. The Alcove, they were brilliant earlier in the day out the back here. So I have another list of sort of ones you might recommend, and sort of ones I might just have Dave Geraghty, Bellix 1 is on. I think now I'm going to try and make that, because I won't make Bellix 1 tomorrow night.
So, Brian, I think you're in the wrong line of work. I think you should be aiming for a DJ slot on RTE 2FM. But I think we can all agree that was a brilliant journey from Drimnagh to Gaddafi's Libya, and everything else. Enjoy the rest of the festival. There's some great gigs coming up, some great podcasts in here as well. And it was a real honour to talk to Brian. Obviously, as a St. Pat's fan, I love him in particular, but I think for everyone in the League of Ireland community and everyone in Irish football more broadly, he's a very unusual thing in the league. He's a broadly popular person, and we love him. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Donald. Thanks very much. Thank you. It's great to be here.